Happy, beautiful day. It's Pete Cohen. It's the Pete Cohen podcast. Today's podcast is all about the geniuses of the world. And yes, you are one of those geniuses. We are going to be looking over the next few weeks at some incredible geniuses, from Michael Jordan to Elizabeth I, to Leonardo da Vinci, to William Shakespeare, to Mahatma Gandhi. But today we're looking at the greatest inventor that ever lived, the incredible Thomas Edison. Let's get ready to learn some incredible lessons that we can apply to our lives for us to be the very best that we can be. We know a great life doesn't happen by chance. It happens by design. The best way to design it, get yourself a coach and learn from some of the greatest people that walk the earth and have walked the earth. I'll see you after the theme tune. The big question is, how are some people in the world today creating the results they want with their health, wealth, and happiness? What exactly are these people doing? This podcast will give you the answers and inspire you to live the life that you want today. Happy, beautiful day. It's Pete Cohen. It's all about the incredible Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison was born in 1847. He died in 1931 at the grand old age of 84. Look, my goal with these podcasts over the next few weeks is for us to learn from some people who have had a massive impact on the planet. And in fact, as I'm recording this podcast, I'm looking at an image on my computer of me being on stage, and everyone's holding up their mobile phone with the lights on. The lights are turned off in the room, but everyone's phone light is on. And the light bulb came. Well, actually, it didn't. This is one of the things we're going to be looking at. I don't really believe there's no such thing as a new idea. What we find is with new ideas that idea came from another idea. And Thomas Edison, one of the things that people think about him for is for his invention of the light bulb. Well, he didn't actually invent it. Other people were playing around with it. What he did is basically find a way to make it work so it worked for a very, very long period of time. And in fact, there are so many things that we can learn from Edison. And that's one of the things I want to share with all of you, is that it's all very well, like being a motivational speaker, you go up and you can motivate people and people feel good. And maybe you'll feel good after this podcast because of some of the things I've said and the energy that I've put into it. And you think, whoa, yeah, I feel great. Whoa. But invariably, you might go back to how you were thinking and feeling before, and not much has changed. It's often what happens in very large companies who pay an Olympic medalist to come in, or someone who's done something incredible, and that person talks about themselves, and the people that are watching go, that was a very interesting story, but they don't actually necessarily take anything away that they apply to their life. What I'd like us to do is wake up the genius within us. This is what I looked at the last podcast. And I really encourage you, if you haven't listened to that, listen to the last one, because we really look at what it means to be a genius. And I asked Siri, because obviously Siri knows everything. And so you don't really need to be intellectual as maybe you used to be in the past to get by. You need more things than just being clever. I think being clever is overrated. I think knowing a lot of stuff is overrated. It's what we do with what we know. And that's what a real genius does. And this is something I just want to touch very, very briefly, because there is a war going on in so many places around the world, but there's a war going on inside every human being, because most human beings have a battle going on with their genius and the other part of them, which I call a duck. You might call it a chimp, you might call it part X. There is a part of us that is often in opposition to where we want to go. And the word genius, a lot of us think it means what it says in the dictionary: exceptionally intelligent, some sort of natural power, natural skill, which is interesting because I don't believe in natural skill. Anyone who's skillful at something, they're skillful at it because they practiced it. They might be talented, but if you're talented and you don't get skillful, then you're not going to get very far. If you really look at the etymology of the word genius, you realize that it doesn't mean someone who's intelligent. It actually means a moral spirit inside someone. And that's what the Romans believed. The Romans believed everyone had a genius inside them. And in fact, most languages, the word genie, like the genie in the lamp, is the same word as genius. But in the 1500s, that is where it's supposed that the word started to change, that we lived in societies where people didn't want everyone to think that they were a genius. Many, many years ago, before hierarchy was just so important, like it is now, or has been so important, but that's been broken down more and more, that we all lived together and we all had to be a genius. We all had to do what we needed to do to survive. And I'm looking to give you a different perspective of yourself and the fact, look, there's a genius inside you. You might not listen to it, but you could. And if you did, and you woke up to the fact that you're incredible, you're amazing, and there's more to you than meets the eye, then your life could be more than it is today. A great life, as I've said, it doesn't happen by chance, it happens by design. And I should have said this a few minutes ago. This podcast is brought to you by Pete Cohen Coaching. We believe in people. We believe in the power of coaching. We offer one of the most incredible coaching opportunities and experience for people all over the world in a way that they can consume it, in a way that they can afford it. And if you want to find out about that, go to petecohen.com/coaching and look at the video, 3 Secrets to Transform Your Life Today. Go and check it out, and you can actually get on a call with me, and we can talk about you and where you are in your life right now, where you want to go, and plot a course to make that happen. If you don't, you settle for a life of mediocrity. Mediocrity means, in its origin, caught in the middle of a rugged mountain. And that's where most of us are, because we're not striving towards something. And that's what we're going to look at over the next few weeks, starting with Thomas Edison, the greatest inventor. We're going to look at his life and we're going to think, what can we learn from him? And by the end of the podcast, I want you to have a few things that you can learn from him that you can apply to your life today. Would that be okay? So most people think of Thomas Edison as the man who invented the light bulb. Well, you know that he didn't actually invent the light bulb. He knew that there was a need for it. Apparently, he didn't like the dark. I think I understand why he didn't like the dark, because he had such a curious mind and he wanted to invent things. It was probably quite hard to invent things under a gas lamp or a candle. He wanted to illuminate the world. And in fact, his purpose, which was fascinating, and lesson 1, have a purpose in life. What was his purpose? To bring out the secrets of nature for the happiness of humanity. Bring out the secrets of nature for the happiness of humanity. Isn't that incredible? We can all have a purpose. My purpose in life is to inspire people to be better every single day. Inspire people to go further, to do more. Inspire people to move forwards towards something in the future that they want to do and they want to create. And when I listen to the story of Edison, I must tell you, it really fires me up to follow in his footsteps. So he was born in 1847 in a place called Milan, not in Italy, I think it's in Ohio, somewhere in the States. He was, I think, 7. It was 7 brothers and sisters. He was the youngest. And if you look at his history, fascinating, he was really, really curious. And in school, they said that he was really disruptive. They said he was backwards, mainly because he kept asking questions. And there's another lesson you can learn from Edison. He always asked questions. And because he was a disruptive influence, he was asked to leave the school, and his mum educated him at home, and his mum educated him by reading to him and encouraging him to read. He loved to read. He loved to learn. And when we look at extremely gifted geniuses, and I'm talking about the genius within all of us, they want to read, they want to learn. Now, we know that the biggest challenge for most of us around any of that stuff is actually just doing it, because there's a part of us in opposition to our genius that wants us to stay where we are. And if you're not in the habit of reading, if you're not in the habit of thinking about your purpose, you'll just be in the habit of doing what you did in the past. So let's help you define what your purpose is. When you have a purposeful life, and realize, look, what's the difference between you and Thomas Edison? Born in a humble place, just went to a normal school. He wasn't particularly privileged, but he had a curiosity. Do you have a curiosity? Yeah. Think of your curiosity like a muscle. It needs to be built. How do you build it? Start asking questions. In fact, when we ask questions, we can rise up the genius inside us, or we can rise up the part of us that is in opposition. You know, I liken it to a duck, the part of you that wants you to stay where you are. And look, this is so important what I'm about to say to you. You might not have heard it like this before, but I think it's a great time for me to share something with you. So, what's the meaning of your life? Excuse me? Yeah, what's the meaning of your life? You might say, well, I'm not sure. Well, let's go back a few thousand years. What was the meaning of your life then? Well, the meaning of our life was to survive, and for you to live long enough that you could be involved in the reproduction process. Male or female, that's what we needed to do to survive. You had to get to that age where basically you could do that. And for most people, it was probably around the age of 15, 16 years old where that reproduction could start. Of course, there was always exceptions to that. So you just had to survive. It wasn't about inventing the light bulb. It wasn't about doing anything like that. It wasn't about getting qualifications and writing books. It was just about surviving. And that part of you is deep within your DNA. So this is what happens. When we grow up, we just want to fit in. We just want to do what everyone else is doing. We just want to survive. And that's often why we learn to talk to ourselves. And in fact, most people who have you ever experienced rejection? Most of us have felt rejection, and you know what? It's painful when you feel rejection. And there's some real interesting theories about why it hurts. It hurts so that it's a bit like an alarm clock to get up, that you wake up to the fact, oh, I could be rejected here. And if I'm rejected, I could be kicked out of my tribe. If I'm kicked out of my tribe, I'll be on my own. If I'm on my own, I won't survive. And that is part of why we are on high alert for most of our to the part of our life where we actually can reproduce. Now, of course, life has changed so much now. We don't have to reproduce. You know, we don't have to have that massive survival instinct. We're living in a world that we're not really designed to live in. Now, what's this all got to do with Thomas Edison? The point I want to make to all of us is to realize, look, you are the way that you are because you grew up. And yeah, you've probably got some interesting thought processes and thought patterns that hold you back. And the more you start to wake up and realize that's okay. You know, it's okay to give myself a hard time. It's okay to have thoughts that stimulate feelings, but to realize you can think greater than you feel. And that's what Thomas Edison did. He decided to think differently. He decided to ask questions, and he decided to have a compelling mission. So by the time he was 12 years old, he became curious and he became a businessman. He actually started working on a train. He started printing a one-page newspaper. He started doing stuff with chemistry. He was basically working. He loved to work and he wanted to make money, but it was quite challenging for him. So he said a quote which was, "You've got to work harder than you worry." Work harder than he was worrying, basically. And we can all do that because we've all got that perplexity or that tendency to go back to worrying. He set out some major markers. He said that every month he was going to have a new invention, and every 6 months he was going to have a major creation. And, you know, some of people know that he ended up with 1,093 patents on different things that him and his team had created. And one of his first creations was to take something which was already there. You know, Thomas Edison knew Alexander Graham Bell. Alexander Graham Bell obviously made the telephone, but Edison actually had some hearing issues. It was pretty hard of hearing. So he took Alexander Graham Bell's idea, and he made it louder. He created the technology that made it louder, which was pretty cool because he could hear, and I'm sure other people who had issues with their hearing. He took an existing idea and he made it better. And again, if we can take something from Edison, we can take an existing idea and make it better. We can take an existing version of ourselves and we can make ourselves better. Isn't that fascinating just to think about it? I also love the way Edison said, I never worked a day in my life, because he genuinely loved what he did. And we could all learn to love what we do. And I know some of you might be saying, well, no, I can't because I don't enjoy what I do. Well, you could, or you could find something else to do that maybe you enjoy doing, or maybe even feel that you were compelled to do. But look, Edison didn't just invent the light bulb. Well, you know, he didn't invent it. Some other people were doing that. He just found a way. He was obsessed with making the light bulb, the little filament, light for longer. And when they found a way, they called it the death watch, where it was him watching and watching. I think it was like eventually burned for like 30 hours. And then, incredibly, he said, right, we want to illuminate a 1 mile square in New York. And he actually oversaw all of the digging under the road to make all of this possible. And it takes people like that to think great, to think ahead, to be inspired about something that's in their future. And that's what we know the word to be inspired is all about. That's, my best-selling book, Inspirate, is all about that. It's about leaders, and you're a leader. You are the leader in your life. And taking the lead in the major areas of your health, your relationships, your work, rather than being a passive observer in your life. And I don't believe there are many people who are passively happy sitting back doing nothing. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with doing that from time to time, but you are at your best when you're creating, when you're doing something. So let's just move it on a little bit. And I want us to think about what else we could learn from Thomas Edison. So yeah, he took an idea, it was already there in the phone, and made it louder. He found a way to make the light bulb. In fact, if you look today and you think, look, his legacy still lives on. But there was so much more to him. He created the recording device. Again, he took that idea from somebody else. But, you can hear Edison. There are recordings of Edison. But just think, before that, you couldn't hear people like Elizabeth I speak. You couldn't hear people like Mahatma Gandhi. Actually, you couldn't hear Mahatma Gandhi speak. William Shakespeare. But he created, can you imagine when people started hearing other people's voices on recording devices? Basically, that was the start of the being able to hear people speak, musicians, comedians, artists, which started the record industry, which started the tape recording industry, which started the MP3, which started now everything, that recording device that you listen to anything on, that all came from Edison. But that wasn't the only thing he created. He also created the movie industry. Incredible how taking moving images, and they created this kind of room that had to be rotated, like a miniature house. It was absolutely amazing. He was obsessed, and maybe you don't need to be as obsessed as he was. He loved to create, but you know what? He also experienced real devastation in his life when his wife died. And, many other things which didn't work out the way he wanted it to, but he just had this drive to keep going no matter what, because he wanted to bring out the secrets of nature for the happiness of humanity. He illuminated the world. Do you think that made people happy? Do you think recording devices made people happy? When you listen to some music today or something, just think, wow, that was Thomas Edison. He really got that going. And if that wasn't enough, what he really, really, really invented was a way of inventing things. And this is probably his greatest invention. So he created an industry of research and development, but he matched that with sales and marketing. He really was the person that was saying, look, we can invent things, but how successful things are is how well they sell. Just incredible. So he kind of invented a massive part of commercialism. And some people might say that's a bad thing. But I don't think it is, personally. I think the guy was an absolute genius, and he's actually quite a hard person to follow. Maybe I should have finished off with Edison and started with somebody else, but no, it doesn't really matter, because all of these people from Michael Jordan, who I've put in there because he's one of my heroes, to Leonardo da Vinci, to William Shakespeare, to Gandhi and others that we will be learning from. We can learn things from all of these people. So let's kind of start to summarize a little bit about what we could actually learn from the incredible Thomas Edison. I think one thing is definitely we can all be a little bit more curious. We can all ask better questions. As a child, you ask questions all the time. Maybe if your parents are still here, you could even ask them, what sort of questions did I ask when I was a child? Maybe it was things like, why is the sky blue? Why is this? Why is that? Why is mummy crying? Why is mummy laughing? Why have you got a big nose? All the things that you were curious about. And unfortunately, for many of us, that curiosity kind of went out the window, especially when we went to school. I mean, a lot of people's school did fuel their imagination and their creativity, but for many people, it was stifled because they had to learn in a way which really didn't stimulate their brain. And I was definitely one of those people. So ask questions. And ask effective questions rather than saying things like, why can't I do that? What's wrong with me? Better questions to ask is, what do I need to do here right now? At the end of every day, what went well? What needs work? What else could you do? You could have a compelling mission. You could develop yourself a purpose. What are you here to do? What makes you feel alive? And we're asking questions again. Ask people what their mission is in life. It's a fascinating conversation to have with people because some people will go, I didn't know I was supposed to have one. But a purposeful life really is a happy life, and it doesn't have to be anything grandiose, but it's like your mission, what makes you feel alive. And that maybe changes over time. Investing into a dream, that was another thing that Edison did. Investing into a dream of something better than what you have here today. Investing in the creating of doing things. I often say to the people I coach, when we get them on a coaching call and we start talking about what they want, and they tell me sometimes, this happened yesterday, a woman I was speaking to who's a part of our coaching community was telling me that she wants to develop a place, an alternative health place for people with who have cancer that they can come to, and they can get some really effective treatment and be in an environment where they can get better or feel as good as they possibly could feel. We know that cancer is like a tornado. Tornadoes start and whirlwinds start because the conditions are right. I mean, it's the same with cancer. Can you change the conditions? Well, you can change the environment outside of you and the environment inside you. These are things that, anyway, she told me this and I told her, my God, she hadn't told anybody. And I thought, wow, you've told me now. I'm going to remember that. And I will remind you of that. So I can be the greatest person, because sometimes people don't want to be reminded because it means they've actually got to do something and get away from where they are. And if you decide to go after something like that, it's not necessarily going to be easy. But what is going to define you isn't what you achieved. It's going to be what you went through to make that happen. So investing into a dream, having goals and having a hunger to go further. And some of the other things which Edison was just incredible at, he had a solution-centered mindset. It was always about finding a solution. Can you imagine being in a room with Edison and you were just talking about all your problems? Can you imagine at some point he'd say, listen, can you just stop talking about that? What are you looking for? What's the solution? What's the outcome that you want? And that forces many people to get outside of their problems and look at it from a different perspective. And that's what he was brilliant at. And lastly, he is extremely well known for this term, the Mastermind Alliance. And I love him for that because Napoleon Hill, who wrote the book Think and Grow Rich, interviewed so many great people around the world who were inventors and designers and business people. And he interviewed Edison, and he could quite clearly see that one of Edison's most important principles was a mastermind alliance. And he would say when two people come together with shared goals and shared visions, that it's like a third mind comes about, that ideas come because two people came together. The law of aggregation, which we've spoken about in other podcasts. And that's what we need to do. I believe we need to be around other like-minded people. And Edison surrounded himself with great thinkers. And many of those people he didn't always agree with, but he needed people like that. We need a mastermind alliance. And that's again, part of what my coaching community is about, is getting people who all want to achieve something similar, who want to strive towards something. And I think whoever it was that said we are the sum of the 5 people that we spend most of our time with, I think that was Andrew Carnegie that said that, one of the greatest businessmen who became the richest man in the world through just an idea. What idea could you take away from today that you could go and apply to your life for you to think like Thomas Edison? If Thomas Edison was right here, right now, what do you think he'd say to you? What are you doing? I think he'd say, what's important to you? What do you love to do? Where are you stuck? Where do you want to go? Edison should never be forgotten for so many reasons. I'm sure he wasn't perfect, but then who is or was? We have this opportunity. We really do. It's called life. And the Pete Cohen podcast is the inspiration revolution. Just here to inspire you in some way. And listen, I know it's challenging that we always have this challenge, the challenge within ourselves. The part of us that basically just wants us to survive, even though we don't need to survive. We need to thrive now. We have the opportunity to thrive. So that voice in your head, that duck that is a judge, it judges you, it judges everything. There's a part of you, I believe, which is much more powerful because it was already there. That part of us came to the fore and we invested in it and it just did what it thought was best. There's a part of you that's much bigger and stronger. It's called your genius. You are a genius. You are the genie inside yourself. It sounds a bit strange, but you're incredible. And I believe in you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Who is the next episode going to be with? Is it going to be all about Gandhi, Michael Jordan, Elizabeth I, William Shakespeare, Leonardo da Vinci? Well, you know what? You're just going to have to wait and see because I've not recorded it yet. I will be recording it soon. What is your biggest takeaway from this podcast? And look, do us a favor. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you listen, share it. One of the things that I was talking to someone who specializes in podcasts, and we were talking about how do you grow your audience? And he said, well, the best way to grow your audience is ask your audience to share it. Ask your audience to tell people about it. And that's the power of 2. That's the power of the mastermind. So you know what? We would really appreciate you telling other people about this because you never know whose life may change because they heard the story of Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison, 1847 to 1931, maybe the greatest inventor that ever lived. Maybe you'll be the next greatest inventor. Think how many people who have been inspired by him all over the world just because he chose to show the way. Who showed him the way? Happy, beautiful day. Thank you so much for watching. Really, really appreciate you. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your evening. What's your biggest takeaway? What are you going to go and put into action immediately? Thanks, yous, and we'll see you soon. All the best. Much love. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you want to find out what life coaching can do for you with me, Pete Cohen, then simply visit petecohen.com/coaching and book a free strategy call, and we can help you find out exactly what it is that you want and help you put a plan in place to create the future that you want today.